So, one most common complaint in innovation governance is that regulation is too slow and innovation too fast. In 1865, the British Parliament took the motor car, one of the greatest inventions in human history, and forced it to crawl behind a man waving a red flag. In my latest essay, I argue that we need to take a step back and carefully examine the role of the man with the red flag and what it tells us about regulating blockchain, AI, crypto assets, and other innovative technologies. My name is Naseem Naqvi. I am the president of the British Blockchain Association. So, the man with the red flag would walk 2 miles an hour in town, 60 yards ahead of the car, to alert everyone that the car was coming, and the car was not permitted to travel any faster than he could walk. And today we look at this image and we find this one of the most bizarre pictures in human history. But don't shoot the messenger, because the guy with the red flag was just a messenger. Let's look at exactly what happened. Now, we might think that it was some frightened regulators in Westminster who didn't understand the innovation, they hated the innovation, they tried to ban it. But the truth is that nobody in Parliament woke up that morning wanting to strangle the British motor industry, and nobody was afraid or scared. They actually had a much smaller problem. It was more of an administrative one. And they had to decide what this thing was. And to decide what it was, they had to name the thing first. And in 1865, the English dictionary had only two words for a thing with wheels on the road. One was carriage, a thing which is pulled by something like a horse, and the other was a locomotive, a thing that moves itself. Since the motor car moved itself, the law decided that the car was a locomotive. And a locomotive in 1865 meant only one thing: a railway engine, a train. And the moment the car became a train in the eyes of law, everything followed automatically. Both trains and cars are heavy. Trains carry a crew, so car must carry a crew. Trains are kept on rails because they are dangerous and they must be fenced away from people on the designated tracks. And trains stop and start on the instructions of the man with the red flag, so the car must also follow the same rules. Now, sometimes we fall into this categorization trap, and when we are presented with a genuinely new innovation, we try to put it in the drawer of some known technologies. If someone puts an iPhone on your desk in 1995 and asks you to regulate it and put it in a drawer, you would be very confused because it is a phone, it's a camera, it's a mailbox, it's a map, it's a music listening app. So which drawer would you choose? So the first thing a legislator does is not deciding whether to say yes or no to an innovation. It is deciding what to call that thing. So because this, if you say yes or no, it can be challenged. But if you say that this is a train, then you never have to say no at all. The classification does the banning for you. So in America, the entire question of whether any digital asset is a security is a question which is still decided by a court case from 1946. And this case was about oranges. This guy on your screen, his name is William Howey, and he was selling strips of land in 1946, and each acre of land had about 48 orange trees. So he said to investors that you buy this strip of land and I will manage the orange trees and you get some profit. So when I sell those oranges, and Supreme Court decided that it was not just a simple buying and selling of the land, but it was an investment contract and it was a security. And this is the 80-year-old ruling now, which governs crypto assets as well. And now it is named after Mr. Howey, called the Howey Test. And this is what it looks like. So basically, you have to fulfill 4 criteria. Is there an investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profit derived from the effort of others? And this is a test that was applied to oranges at that time, but now it also applies to crypto assets. And it puts most of these ideas, these digital assets, in the drawer of security. And some proponents of digital assets and some advocates say that this is the 1865 all over again, the red flag. And this is why there is a push for a Clarity Act, which says that the crypto assets may be a security in the early days when it is centralized, when it is launched, but as it becomes mature and becomes more decentralized, it becomes a commodity. And when it comes to crypto assets, there are several challenges. So the lawmakers in the UK, they were faced with a similar challenge. For several hundred years, English law has recognized that there are 2 kinds of personal property: things in possession and things in action. So the things in possession are things that you can own physically, such as a gold bar or a house or a laptop. And then things in action, these are the rights that you can enforce. These are the rights you can hold but you cannot touch, such as a contract or a stock market share or intellectual property, shares in company, insurance policies, pension, etc. So there are 2 drawers only, and everything that you have ever owned had to go in one of the drawers. And then the digital assets arrive. Now, digital assets are, technically speaking, neither. You cannot hold Bitcoin in your hand, and it is not a claim against anybody either. So it's a new kind of a thing. So in 2025, Parliament decided not to force it into an old drawer. What they did is they built a 3rd drawer, and they actually called it the 3rd category of personal property. So a new kind of a thing, a 3rd category. And they did not name it, they said only what it is not. So they left it to the courts to discover what that asset, digital asset, is doing on a case-by-case basis using common law and common sense. Now, you might think that the legislators are maybe a bit vague here, maybe a bit indecisive, but people argue that this is probably one of the wisest things a legislature can do by actually not categorizing something in a concrete way and putting it in a fixed drawer. And to explain this further, I have to take you back 4,000 years. Now, this guy that you see on your screen, he is called Hammurabi. He is a Babylonian Empire ruler who ruled the empire around 4,000 years ago. And he left us with one of the oldest surviving codes of law on earth. He wrote more than 280 laws, attempting to govern some of the most complex cases of his lifetime, including innovation. And among the laws was a code for builders. And it goes like this, that if a builder builds a home and the home collapses and kills its resident, then the builder should be put to death. Now, notice what is not there in this law. There's nothing about the material, the timber of the building is made of, nothing about the foundation, the thickness of the wall. Hammurabi's code doesn't care about how you build something. Any method you like, invent any technique, use any tool. He regulated only one thing, and that thing is the collapse of the building. He never had to name the building or to classify it or understand it himself. He did not care. The only thing he cared about is collapse, and collapse is a binary outcome, whether you are in 1750 BC or you are in 2026. So either the building is standing or it has collapsed. So here is the argument. He said that you regulate the harm, and then you can govern a technology that you do not understand. Or you regulate the object, and then you have to name it first and put it in a drawer. And in 1865, we regulated the object first, and the harm never needed the name at all. Hammurabi regulated the harm, and he never needed to name the thing at all. So very important point. Some more examples. This is famous Marconi. We all know, the inventor of a radio. And at that time, this technology was every bit as disruptive as a blockchain. And this is a technology where invisibly a human voice could travel through the air, across the oceans, with no wires in between. And nobody had a category for it. Nobody knew what it was. And very quickly, it developed into chaos. In 1945, anyone could broadcast. So all you needed was a transmitter. And on any frequency they liked, all they needed was a radio set, a transmitter, and the stations popped up everywhere. They drowned each other out. There were 2 or 3 voices on the same wavelength, same frequency, and it all became a chaotic noise. The whole miraculous invention of Marconi was collapsing into uselessness. So legislator chipped in. They had two choices. They had the 1865 choice or the Hammurabi choice. So they could have asked, well, what is this radio? What kind of thing is it? Who should be allowed to broadcast? What is a transmitter? Who should be allowed to buy or own a transmitter? But they didn't do any of that. They did what Hammurabi did, and they didn't regulate the radio at all. What they did was prevented only one thing, which is the harm and which is the collision. They did not tell any broadcaster what to say, how to speak, when to speak, etc. So they only focused on one thing, which is the collision of 2 signals, the same frequency, that destroy each other. So they allocated the frequencies, they issued licenses to radio stations, and they allowed them to use a specific designated frequencies, and they regulated the collision point and nothing else. And this is Hammurabi again, 3,000 years later in Washington. Now, is it possible to regulate things in a way that you have rules based legislation where you have a clear plan of what to do if a new evidence emerges? And the answer is yes. and we have a classical example of the Montreal Protocol of 1987, one of the most successful environmental treaties ever signed. And they signed it while the science was still contested. So by 1985, it was reported that the ozone layer appears to be developing a hole, and the cause might be harmful chemicals such as the CFCs, the chlorofluorocarbons. So the legislators did not wait for the certainty. They got together and they built a treaty with a ratchet. So a fixed revision points where the law could be tightened as the new evidence came in. And they were tightened again and again. The law was designed from the very first day to be revised in the light of new evidence, and the laws were very evidence based, and they said that we can revisit and change if needed. And the result of that was that the over the course of the next 30 years, we saw significant reduction in the size of the ozone hole that was appearing, and in fact it has already started healing. So this is another way of regulating things, that you build a ratchet and you tighten it as the new evidence emerges. Now, you might say regulating only harm is a fantastic idea, but wouldn't it be too late by the time Hammurabi's building has collapsed and someone has already died? You might say, well, I don't want to be reactive. I don't want to wait for the harm to occur from some innovation. And sometimes you may be right. Sometimes the frightened people are right. So here is 8th of September 1960. We are in FDA headquarters, the Food and Drug Authority in the United States. And a file lands on the desk of a new medical reviewer about a new drug which has already been approved across Europe. It's been sold so freely that in Germany you can buy it over the counter without even a prescription. It's a sedative drug. It is given to pregnant women for morning sickness. And the company executives expected a rubber stamp. They thought it was just a formality. And a reviewer named Francis Kelsey reads the file and says, no, I am not approving it because the safety data is thin. Can you please provide me with more evidence of safety of this drug? And the company got furious. They called her obstructive, they called her pedantic, they called her all sorts of things. They said that she is in the way of innovation. They went over her head. They applied every pressure they had for 14 months. But Francis Kelsey did not authorize the drug. In August 1962, she was summoned to testify in Senate, and she stood her ground. She was questioned as to why she is not approving the drug which is being used commonly across the globe, across Europe. And the drug was thalidomide. By then, 24,000 cases approximately were reported of babies born with catastrophic congenital birth defects, birth deformities. More than half of those babies died within 1 year, and some who survive were left with crippling defects for years to come. Francis Kelsey was the man with the red flag. She walked out in front of a new discovery, an innovation. She slowed it to a crawl. She was told by the CEO of the Thalidomide company that she was standing in the way of progress. And she was subsequently awarded the presidential awards and medals, and was given the name the women who saved America. So, what happened to the man with the red flag eventually? Well, in 1896, the Parliament finally repealed the Red Flag Act, and to celebrate that, they held a drive from London to Brighton the day the walking man was sent home and the future was allowed to accelerate. They called it the Emancipation Run, and it still runs every November. Some of the oldest cars in Britain drive between London and Sussex to celebrate the day law finally stopped walking in front of the future. But here is the thing and thought I want to leave you with. The task when regulating innovation is never to abolish the man with the red flag, because sometimes he is Francis Kelsey, and a society with no red flag at all finds out about thalidomide the hard way. The task is not to get rid of the red flag. The task is to teach him where to stand, not at the innovation factory, but at the point of harm, where the thing touches the person who did not choose it and cannot consent for it. The task is not to get rid of the red flag, but to have the wisdom to work out where to set it down. Because while innovation cannot be regulated, consequences must be regulated. And the laws that will define the future will not be the ones that predicted the future correctly. They will be the ones built to be wrong safely. Thank you.